Hello guys, my name is Marc from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. So today I want to talk about soloing on static chords. So one chord vamp, or when there's a single sound in your song and you don't have a chord progression or standard or blues or whatever to solo over. And this video has been inspired by a student of mine on a private on Skype that showed me a Rick Beato video. Kudos, by the way. Tipping my hat to Rick. If you don't know him, go check him out. B-E-A-T-O, Rick Beato. And his video is titled Soloing on Static Chord Vamps, or so on static chords. And I guess what I want to do right now is give you the master key. I think Rick's video is great, but I think he gets really quickly in the deep end of stuff in the theory of the music, and it's not quite necessary. So I'm going to take a moment today in this vlog to demonstrate some of the stuff we'll be using. So what? Okay, we'll be using a D minor 7 sound, and there's just a single chord going and there's a groove. Rick had picked, he calls it an E5 chord, so actually it's just, an E power chord. And he goes really fast into saying, oh, I want to use, I think he calls them sus2 arpeggios. So you pick the E major, but then you go 1, 2, 3, 5, 1. So in my jazzer mind, I'm like, well, yes, that works. It's 1, 2, 3, 5, 1. It's just you pick the scale and you're playing on 4 notes out of 7, and that's totally legit. And that's why I want to give you the master key. So even if you don't watch the rest of this, if you can walk away with one piece of knowledge, it is that to gain fluency, we'll go into detail right now. To gain fluency as an improviser, you should take the materials apart. And when I say materials, like, the scale, it's got 7 notes. And then maybe look only at a certain group of notes, maybe 4 of them, and shred on them. And that's a master key. It's like, yes, the scale is there, yes, the arpeggio is there, but what else is there in there? And can you use that to build your own licks and phrases? And I guess, well, it is my fair guess that this is how you become a great improviser. All right, so what I want to talk about next is, ultimately, yeah, so I'm taking notes in my little journal, as usual. And the importance to shred is to say, all right, yes, the chord is E, or now it's going to be D minor. And I'm going to restrict myself. I'm going to add a constraint to go, I'm only building phrases off of what I chose, not the entire scale, not all the arpeggio, not all the stuff I know, just that, to develop your vocabulary. And often I see that's a beginner and intermediate player mistake, that they think they need to build more stuff. But ultimately, if you look at D minor 7, you might learn maybe 2 or 3 different scales. And the scales will be, Dorian and minor and melodic minor, and they'll be very similar. But that's the end of that. You can't build materials forever because we have 12 notes, right? So the magic of the music comes from using less materials but saying more with it, meaning that even if you learned more words in English, you wouldn't necessarily tell a better story. It's the way you put these things together that matters, right? So let's jump in right away. Actually, I have, so the master, just to recap, the master key once again is to take the scale for a single chord apart, take it apart, and maybe look at only a few notes. I would say 5 is a pentatonic, or 3 or whatever, and shred on it. That's my big takeaway. Now to get to the specific, I would call them Marc's priorities. Number 1, if you are improvising on a static chord vamp, you should be confident in playing the scale that is associated with that chord. So if we're talking about it's a D Dorian sound, you should have at least 1 or 2 good fingerings for the scale. So we'll play it up to the 7th. 1, 2, 3. And by the way, D Dorian is D, E, F, G, A, B, C. It's the same notes as the C major scale, right? So even if you're not familiar with modes, so D Dorian is the 2nd mode of C major. So this would be a good exercise to start with. Maybe I'm going to put my backing track on and run you through what I could do. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, go. And back down. Higher. Something like that. And again, back down. Right, so that's like, you already know how to do that most likely. So that's it's really, really important that you know the scale or scales that represent that chord. Now, that being said, a beginner or intermediate player with a... God, do I really talk fast like that all the time? That's what my wife meant. Anyways, you need to have them in and out, but you will run out of ammos, you will run out of gas if all you can do is running up and down scales. All right. So that's Marc, priority number one. Priority number two is to learn your pentatonic and blues scales. So in the case of a D minor 7 chord, there would only be one scale that would be useful, and it would be the D minor. And the pentatonic any fingering works. You can start it here. Right, it's your blues thing. If we were on a different chord, and I'll just pick an instance of playing on a B flat blues, you know, the this would be a B dominant chord, then you would have that scale. And that's what we call the minor pentatonic, the minor blues scale. But there's also the other one that is the major one. So this one has a more of a country twang. In the case of minor chords, there's using the major pentatonic blues is not really recommended, but any way you come across a chord, attempt to have that pentatonic down, and that I'm going to go back to the intro again, say you need to shred on your pentatonic. So I'm going to take the static D minor 7 once again, or D minor 9 vamp, let it run, and I will strictly build pentatonic and blues phrases on there. You ready? 2, 3, 4. Want to try it? Play with me. And we're done. Good job. So that's self-explanatory, but sometimes stating the obvious is better than skimming it, because as far as jazz goes, it's so much related to blues that if you avoid that step, and even learning to solo on static chords, all you do when you're playing on multiple chords is put a bunch of chords together, so that stuff should also come out. You should be able to use your blues phrases on standards and things that are not blues. All right, so that's my second priority. The third one is sort of a tricky one that I built 2 or 3 videos on YouTube over the years, and it's to learn your interval structures within the scales. I see a lot of guys going like, oh, you need to learn your scales, and go, yes, that's fine, do this, you can. But in my mind, it's better to understand what your scale is made of. And by this, I mean, if you look at the Dorian scale, you can say, well, if I start on the D note, and I play a third up, play D, F, and if I go to the next scale tone and play E, G, F, A, G, B, A, C, so I'm playing what we would say diatonic thirds. And playing diatonic thirds like this will uncover a lot of things maybe you haven't really mastered technically in your fingers and you don't hear properly. So maybe go like this. And I don't want to go into the details of all of this, but you know what to do. And then on the way back down, you might, instead of going like everybody, go. Maybe you want to go. Keep the direction of your interval constant. So I play ascending thirds. I'm going to play ascending thirds even if I'm going down the neck. Right? Now we're only talking about thirds, and we only talked about D Dorian, but imagine, any scale that you want to look at, you should do that work. Now you might want to look into fourths. So say, yeah, I have a D and a G, and then an E and an A, and an F and a B natural. Oh, that's a tritone. And then, and go on. I skipped one, this one, yeah. That's fun. And then all the way down. Right? And then, of course, I did ascending thirds and I did ascending fourths, but you might do descending thirds and descending fourths might go. This is a knuckle buster, by the way. And then what if you started to mix it? I'm going to do an ascending third and a descending third after. So ascend third, right? Things like that, and then you can do this with fourths. And then I'm gonna stop there, or else we'll still be sitting here tomorrow. But you could do fifths and sixths and sevenths, and the purpose of discovering the intervallic structures within the scale, and I'm going to attempt to put a link to the video here or here, wherever YouTube puts it, for that old patterns video where I discussed this, is and that as being my third priority is you will find corners of the scale that are not built off of arpeggios, off of scales, that are not built off of pentatonic scales, through that process of discovering intervals. And it's interesting once you start to match different intervals, like up a seventh and down a third or something like that, and you will find things that would be left undiscovered for you when you're playing in your ears. So that's my third priority. I want to move on, or else we won't have much time left to do anything else. So, and fourth, so my first three priorities, like scale, the pentatonic, your intervallic structures that you will explore at your own pace, and fourth, yes, your arpeggio. So you need to know. And people sometimes stop there, but you need to be able to, right? You need to be able to patternize your arpeggios. Maybe have your approach tones, like you get this guy. So you need to be able to play an arpeggio that runs into a scale. You know, things like that. So it's not plainly that you keep starting your arpeggio on the 1. You need to be able to do 1, 3, 5, 7. In this case, it's 1 flat 3, 5 flat 7. But you also need to be able to start on your third. I started on F, right? So ensure you explore many facets, many exercises relating to your arpeggios, so that your arpeggio doesn't wind up being one thing. It's like, oh, that's it. That's D, F, A, C, and I'm done. So avoid doing that and really explore your arpeggio. So with that in mind, you have 4 priorities, and as always, I will encourage you to look at the blog that has this information on it. And I want to take a little bit of an interlude, because I talked earlier as how sometimes beginners and early intermediates assume they need to, they started to learn a lot of stuff, and now to make their soloing sound better, they need to add even more stuff, like double the amount of stuff. And it's not true, because the theory is limited. So what's going to make or break your solo is really a sense of timing. So you can get away with murder, and I think I want to demonstrate this. So long as your time and your phrasing and your swinging is good. And I'm going to refer to phrasing as saying, sometimes you need to know when to shut up during your solo. While you're taking it out, I hear great solos, I'm like, I would have taken a bit more silence, so it gives the listener time to digest the ideas. So sometimes I get players that gain fluency, and they never stop playing, and it winds up sounding okay because of that. While if you frame your great phrases, your great licks with silence, it's going to sound way better. So that's one thing. And timing, of course, is you need to be swinging. You need to be on the beat, in the pocket, and that will make your solo sound good, even if your note choice sometimes like, oh, it's sketchy. And so that can make it or break it. And secondly, what I referred earlier as your vocabulary. So what's going to make it sound good is if you come up with unique phrases that resonate with you, that you can really hear well, and that you can use on the fly, because you know that these 3 notes together over D minor 7 will sound good. So that's really the essence of it. So let me do a demonstrate, like a 30-second demo, where I will literally ignore the fact that I'm playing on D minor 7. And by the way, that's a one take. I'm like not reshooting this or whatever. I'm not bragging, just saying it might sound not good, and it does often. but it's just to show that the phrases themselves can still make sense and can still be in good time, well, in okay time and in good swinging, even though your note choice is like berserk, like it doesn't make sense. All right, let's do this right away. So it's 120 for about 30 seconds. All right, so I used a lot of triplets for a certain reason. I was just like, and I heard it like this, but you see, my phrases were, say, I could have had another jazzer here and hold a conversation in music with that if you just take out the bad notes. You can just go, the rhythm was good, the phrasing was good, so that's what you're after. And so that's the end of my interlude, and for those of you who are brave enough to stick around, I have more, I would call them bonus crazy things that are materials for you to solo on static chords. So when I tell you, okay, the goal is to extract stuff from the scale, and Rick Beato goes to the deep end of the pool really fast, and I'm telling you, learn the scale, learn the pentatonics, learn the arpeggio, and learn intervallic structures within the scale. I have 4 more I want to get across to you that we can spend a little bit of time on. Number 1, people will get bored with your 1 3 5 7 quickly. 1 flat 3 5 7. So clever guys like me when I was a kid would say, well, why don't I do 3 5 7 9, 3 5 7 9, a flat 3 5 flat 7 9. And if you look at these notes, it's F, A, C, and E. And if you know your theory, you recognize that this is an F major 7 arpeggio. And it means that if you use an F major 7 arpeggio during a D minor 7 chord, you're actually outlining an extended arpeggio. So it's sort of a secret sauce that you can put a backing track on and think only of F major 7 as you're playing a D minor 7 sound. And people will call this, oh, you're superimposing or you're substituting. I'm not actually substituting anything because F major 7 lives in D minor 7. It does live there. It's just another way to get to that. And all the work that you should do, all this pitch work that you have to do on your arpeggios to master them, it has to be done. So I'll give you the trick. Start on the 3rd of your chord and build an arpeggio there. So you have 3 5 7 9. Then do it on the 5th, 5 7 9 11, and then do it on the 7th, 7 9 11 13. And just for fun, I'm going to take a little bit of a shorter backing track for about 15 seconds. I'm going to use F, A, C, E, F major 7 arpeggio over a D minor 7 chord right now. 2, 3, 4. Good. Now let's do the same with A minor 7. Why A minor 7? Because it's A, C, E, and G. Good. And last one, I'm going to use a C major 7 arpeggio. C is actually 7, C, E, G, and B, and that's 7, 9, 11, and 13 of D minor 7. That's the harder one. So bear with me. That's a 6, right? Sounded pretty good, that not the soloing, but the sound of it, I really liked that. So always be mindful that you can work really hard on your 7th arpeggios and repurpose them. So So that's I would say that's my sixth, like my crazy sixth thing. Number 7, as a bonus in my crazy things, little sip of coffee. I would say extended pentatonics really have a big place in my heart, because I shred them. I practice on them so much, and I do a lot of that in my playing, and it's my style. And not just my style, but it's a thing I've really adopted and learned to like. So if you take your D minor 7 arpeggio, D minor pentatonic, D minor pentatonic. If you want to get an extra note and still use a 5-note scale, another pentatonic, go up a fifth, so D, A, and use A minor pentatonic. And A minor pentatonic is only 1 note away from D minor pentatonic. Effectively, you change the F note to an E. And what's fun is, you already know your A minor pentatonic. It will sound different melodically. You can't go like... You can't use your old A minor blues licks over your D minor chord. It's not going to sound the same. The context is different, but you sort of get it for free. And that's one technique. Because of the way the pentatonic is built, if you break it down, it's built in fifths. And we could talk about this some other time, but by building it in fifths like this, you realize that if you go up a fifth, you sort of extend it. And you can go up a fifth again and play instead the E minor pentatonic. So D, A, and E are a fifth apart. And E minor pentatonic will just shine another light on your scale, meaning that you will change your C note to a B note, so you sort of get the sixth in there. So you could do a mix and match. What I want to do for you now is just demonstrate, just because I love that sound, for about 30 seconds, using A minor pentatonic over a D minor 7 chord vamp. C'est parti! Let me take a moment to use E minor pentatonic for a completely different sound with the sixth during our D minor vamp. Good. And goes without saying, if you're into the pentatonic, if you go pentatonic crazy like I did when I was like 20, you will want to practice the patterns, same as intervallic structures, but I have great videos and blogs on the website on this. You want to go, of course, like, like this. And you want to do it backwards. And you want to do... and go. Those are just basic pentatonic patterns that are used by sax players and trumpet players, so you can sort of gain movement within the scale instead of always going, as much as I love Eric Johnson, I think he does a lot of going up and down the pentatonic scale, and to me that sort of gets old when I do it. All right, and I have 2 more. So another crazy thing you might want to do to break out material is triad pairs. And sorry, it's like there was a breath that didn't fully come in. Like people say, oh, I was eating and it came down the wrong hole. It's like, oh, I took a bite of air almost. Okay, we're back. The famous triad pair to use over C major is using the F major triad. Actually F triad and G triad. So the triad on the 4th and on the 5th. And the reason for this is, well, you have 6 notes out of the 7 notes of the scale. The only one you're missing is the E note. ironically is the major third of the C chord. And people that use and teach this approach, it can sound pretty interesting. To me, it's like another way to look at a scale, like I did with pentatonic. People like arpeggios, people like chromatic approach. I like pentatonics. People love triad pairs. They're not so guitar friendly, but I have a few students who really went really far with that study. So the rationale in using F and G still applies to D minor 7, to a deep Dorian sound, because the parent scale is still C major. So people will say, well, you learn your triads, but you need to go and build a lot of ammos to build patterns like and etc. And then I should next year, I promise I won't practice on camera. I systematically do it in every video. I'm like, it's a shame. But practicing patterns like this, I showed you a basic one, like go up one, go down one. But if you develop this into a language, you can really build vocab. And I would say I'm not confident I know them, but I do know that stuff doesn't show up in my improv, and I'm really improvising, so I'm not going to demonstrate. But there's Facebook groups using the triad pairs and things like that, so check it out. And lastly, I'm going to go on a slight tangent for advanced players and the brave, which is you can start to pull out a Cannonball Adderley, which on So What you've heard, he's sort of making changes up as he goes and he's spelling them out, yet the band is still playing D minor 7. And the start of this, to me, is to really alternate between a chord and its fifth Roman 5 chord, like the dominant, right? So in the case of D minor 7, I would go on an A7 flat 13 flat 9, an A altered, a real altered chord. And why I'm saying this, because you will build a tension that will necessitate, if it's an English word, you will require a resolution to your D minor sound. So what I will attempt to show you now is I'm going to play my Dorian crazy ideas for a while. Even my pentatonic licks and whatever I'm familiar with, and then I'm going to go in A altered scale mode, like sorry, practicing videos again. Alright, so I'm going to create phrases using both, and you're going to notice it's going to start to clash, but it's going to build up like an elastic band, and then I'm going to go back on the D minor. Ready for this? Here we go. That's totally altered. And back. So I made an effort to sort of stay in it past my own comfort zone. I'm like, oh yeah, we need to resolve this. And just to show you, it's like, oh, there's a lot of notes within that altered scale that are still common notes to your Dorian scale. So effectively, you're just running in place. But if you learn to play altered licks on A7 altered while your D minor 7 chord sound, it's going to create that nice sense of resolution. All right, so to recap, and thanks for watching, guys. Rick Beato's video is great. He's got these ideas. I'm telling you, the master key is create your own pieces, fragments of scales that you want to work on, whether it be pentatonics, the scales, the arpeggios, the triad pairs, or even the interval structures I told you, extended arpeggios, extended pentatonics, triad pairs, experimenting with your 5 chords. Experimenting with your side slipping might even be one great idea. As always, I create these vlogs for you guys upon questions and requests, so I'm always happy to hear from you in the comments below. What do you think? Do you have any questions or ideas for future vlogs? And as always, please share this video with anyone you think might like it. Please subscribe to the channel if you didn't do so already, and I will see you soon on the website, jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. Take care and see you next time.